Hello there, I am Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And it's time for Press X Chat, y'all. But before we get into that, whatever I just did there...
I am not sure. Where did you get y'all from?
I don't know. Please don't allow me the opportunity to do accents on this because I will drag this through the muck where my Welsh becomes Indian. And nobody wants that. But before we get into what we're talking about today, please do click subscribe and that notification bell because it is incredibly important to small up and coming channels like us. It helps us grow. It helps us become big channels one day. But... we're talking about video games today, not my bad accents, which is another series altogether, I think. We got a number of running series in Press X. We've got the Dead franchise series. We got the franchises we love. We've got some Room 101 stuff planned in the future. But the one we're going to really launch into today is Why Do We Love? We're launching this one with the point-and-click game. So as the title of this video that you clicked on suggests, today we're talking about why do we love point-and-click games? So, I think I've got to divert this to my co-host sat over there because as much of a history as I have with these things, his is much more vast, so I think lean into him first. So, why do you love point-and-click games, Rob?
Well...
I know it's a big question, but...
where do I start? I know. Let's start with Monkey Island.
That's a gateway for a lot of people. LucasArts is basically the answer to this question.
Well, it is in a lot of ways, because at the end of the day, Monkey Island was one of those games that appeared and it created this... and it didn't create the point-and-click genre. That was already in existence.
Oh, no, there was all sorts of weird stuff before this.
There were loads of games before... there were several games before Monkey Island, but the point-and-click adventure game was one of those things that it was there and it got some press. So you had games like King's Quest and Police Quest, and you had the early Leisure Suit Larry games.
Well, it was a genre which was yet to have its masterpiece, to have its title where it says, "Here I am. This is what the point-and-click game is." Which is what
Monkey Island was.
Yeah,
Monkey Island was. See, you had a lot of games where they got good press and they were very well received. You could have, Beneath the Steel Sky, for example, I think is an amazing game. I think it's an amazing story. And I would love to see somebody remake that for the modern era because it would really hold up.
That's the thing about these games. They don't really age, do they?
No, the graphics might not be great, but that's it.
That's it, really. Just needs a new paint job.
But then Monkey Island came along, and it was something that we hadn't seen before. And we're talking about LucasArts, who had other titles like Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. And
that's a good name.
Yeah, I know. What's his name? Created Psychonauts. Tim Schafer.
Yeah, he's one of the kings of this side game, isn't he?
Tim Schafer, he cut his teeth with games like Monkey Island and Zach McCracken and what was the other big one with the Day of the Tentacle?
Day of the Tentacle, yeah. And did he do Grim Fandango, or that was before him?
I don't know if he worked on.
It's that era though. It's the same era of thing, like mid-90s, 94, 96, something like that area.
Yeah. The thing is, you had point and click adventures before then, which a lot of them came from Sierra Games, who I adored as a company, and because they were releasing games like King's Quest and Space Quest and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which were. Because you got to remember, at the time, the machines didn't have the same capabilities as they have now. You had the Commodore Amiga, you had the ZX Spectrum, you had just PCs that could run games, but not to the level of now.
Oh no, night and day. We're basically operating on supercomputers by their standards.
Yeah, well, not supercomputers, hypercomputers.
Yeah, well, I was a pedantic guy over there.
When I started, let me put it this way: do you remember the movie Short Circuit?
Yes.
And how the robot brags about having 500 megabytes of storage?
He does that, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
It's like Escape from New York is set in the far-flung future of 1997.
Exactly.
Bless this old sci-fi.
And that's the era we were living in, okay? And so point-and-click adventures were this gateway to a story and an adventure And when you play games like first-person adventures or first-person action adventures, first-person dungeon crawlers like Eye of the Beholder, the D&D games, that sort of thing, they were a different thing entirely, because that was more of you and the game, whereas a point-and-click adventure was the closest that you could get to actually playing a story.
Yeah. Yeah, they were really the first sort of games that pushed the idea that a game wasn't just gameplay.
Yeah.
Because before that, games were just basically pick up and play, like levels, you jumped into a level, you left the level. It didn't have any staying power.
Yeah.
Platformers were the king of the crop back then.
See, the weird thing is, point-and-click adventures were kind of an offshoot of the choose-your-own-adventure books.
Well, even before that, they were offshoot. They're basically graphics. I can't remember what they called them, but what was that game? It says you walk down a corridor. It's like text on a screen.
Zork.
Press left or right. What's left? Oh, there's this thing.
You mean Zork?
Is that what that was called?
Yep, Zork.
It's an extension of that, isn't it? But with graphics added to it.
Yeah.
Obviously. But you gave a history there, haven't you?
I'm sorry, but
you've not answered this question. Why do you love point-and-click games?
Well, see, that's the thing. That kind of is part of the answer. The history I have with point-and-click games, I'm immediately going to be attracted to a point-and-click adventure game. Yeah. And some of the modern ones have been great.
Yes.
Silence was a point-and-click adventure game, which I thought was a lot of fun.
Well, it's
and graphically,
it's a golden age for him, really, isn't it? Now
there are thing is,
well, no, golden age. The golden age is pretty obvious. But
see, here's the thing:
Silver Age.
Point-and-click adventures have certain advantages that other games don't have. Broken Sword, for example, right? You could do a lot of things with the graphics in point-and-click adventures that you can't do with other games, because what you're talking about are animated sprites on a still image, right?
Yes.
And because it's not as labor-intensive in the graphics, you can make the game itself, the story itself, a lot more complicated and a lot more interactive.
Well, I think that's true, but my reason is a bit different. I think going to movies, one of the types of movies that I'll always have an affinity for is mystery movie. It's why I think it's one of the things on TV which really has an almost unlimited amount of staying power is the police procedural.
Yeah.
Because observing this story and being part of the story unfolding and seeing what's happening, seeing it unfold, it's really invigorating on the big screen. But in the video game form, for you to be that vehicle for the story, to progress the story, to open up the idea that a lot of video games, I'm not including hard games like Dark Souls, Ghouls and Ghosts, whatever, but a lot of games, they do hold your hand.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get this mystery, you start off with, let's use the film noir trope. You are a private investigator, and a damsel in distress comes in your office and says, "Well, mister, I've got to find my long-lost sister." She talks in an Teesside accent. It's a really weird damsel in distress.
You're saying that, but you know what I'm thinking?
And then when you basically set off with this one fact, and the story just explodes out of it. And for you to be experiencing all that, I think, as far as games go, I don't know whether it's possible to do it with anything else. It's the one thing which point-and-click adventures, no whether it's a Telltale, which I don't really call it point-and-click. It's a bit different. It's a bit adjacent to it.
It is. But
as a genre, as an expanded genre, that's the only place you can get that sort of thrill.
See, when you were saying, let's choose noir, and damsel walks into...
is there a damsel in distress film noir point-and-click adventure?
You were saying that, but you know what I immediately went to? Discworld Noir, which I love, because it is the humour of Discworld through and through.
I remember having a demo of that on PlayStation 1. That was a fun game.
I will always remember from Discworld Noir the butler saying, "My loins quiver with pleasure at your attendance, sir."
Yeah, you don't really get that in any... I mean, maybe Tim Schafer would do that in one of his other games, but outside of point and click, you don't get... It's got the best... Let's be honest, it's also got, like, uniformly, in games, the best dialogue is always in point-and-click games.
Yeah, and the best humor is in point-and-click games
Yes,
because
without doubt.
And this is why I was saying they could spend more time because they're not. It's not as intensive with the graphics. They could spend more time developing the dialogue, the story options, things like that. Which is why the Monkey Island games continue to be well thought of and funny.
Well, they don't really date, do they?
I mean, what was it? The Curse of Monkey Island.
Well, insult fencing is possibly one of the most immortal sequences in all the video games.
Which they then developed into insult arm wrestling in The Curse of Monkey Island.
Of course they did.
See? I mean, just the thought of it is making you laugh.
It makes no sense, but yeah, that's what's good about it, you know.
I mean, I love the fact that LeChuck, who started off as a pirate, ended up as a ghost pirate, then ended up as some weird demonic ghost zombie pirate, LeChuck. And just kept getting different forms.
Well, the thing is, I think there's a lot more that can be put into... I mean, even the worst, I don't really believe there's that... If you get the fundamentals right in a point-and-click game, I don't believe any of them are truly bad. As long as you get the fundamentals right, I believe they're all pretty good.
Fahrenheit.
Well, that's David Cage. David Cage is special. He should be put in his own little box and just left alone inside that box where he can talk about immersion 7 times in every sentence.
But you can have a fight with the internet.
You can have a fight with the internet, and the internet is a green man who runs along the side of walls. But as far... Because the thing about point-and-click adventure is it's the sort of franchise, it's the sort of games where you are part of the world. You can get into that world much more. Like ones that I've played recently, there was was it called Memorandum? I think it was called that. But one based around the novels of Haruki Murakami. Now, there's no other genre of games where you can get into the imagination of such a wildly inventive author as the point and click. Or another one I played recently that I really liked, Whisper of a Machine.
Yeah.
Which I adored because it was sort of cyberpunk police Nordic noir investigation thing. It's these sort of things which it's just impossible sorts of things for another video game to do. I mean, look at Cyberpunk 2077, sorry. It looks fantastic. It has that aspect to it, but at the end of the day, it has to tailor the game to its customizability and its action. It can't put all the stock in that game in the investigative stuff because people will get bored. It needs to have that thrill, whereas in the point-and-click game, it is purely on the world. It is purely on how you interact with it.
Yeah.
And I don't think any other game can really commit as singularly single-mindedly at the end on that sort of stuff as any other genre.
I do want to just highlight one particular game which, when I played it, it was so very different to everything that I'd played. And this was the game that basically... it's kind of follow on from the last episode we did. This is the game that allowed me to discover my love of steampunk.
Okay.
Siberia. Sokal's Siberia trilogy. It's a trilogy now, but for a long time it was only Siberia 1 and 2.
Yeah, I do recall that. Kind of been forgotten a bit, hasn't it?
It has, but I think that the whole idea of Siberia was a really fascinating... I mean, they basically built a really fascinating world. Quite literally, just it came out of the blue. I played the first game, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. Then played the second game, and I was like, oh, I think I kind of love this.
Yeah. Well, it's just the genre I love.
Yeah.
I said basically why. I mean, it's a genre which I think it's pretty damn... You have to go a long way to find a bad one.
Let's put
like a truly bad one.
Let's put it this way. When you don't have to stress too much about the gameplay and the graphics, you can do amazing things with dialogue and story options.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's one of the things that... So, the main reason I don't like games like Five Nights at Freddy's...
That has nothing to do with this, but go on.
No, it has a lot to do with this. The main reason is because there's no hook for me, there's no narrative, there's nothing that's going to keep me playing the game.
Yeah.
Right? And I keep saying to people, story is important. You can have just one-off experiences, and they might be good the first and second time, but by the third or fourth time, it's very old. There's nothing that's going to make you remember that in 5-10 years' time.
Well, you go on a ghost train and you know where all the jumps are, don't you?
Yeah.
So it loses its thrill very quickly.
But, I mean, Beneath the Steel Sky, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the Day of the Tentacle, Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, The Secret of Monkey Island, all those stories, I remember them all.
Yeah. The thing is, they're genuinely challenging as well.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of, I don't know how to do this level, I'll just look the guide up online. It requires some grey matter.
Yeah.
And not a lot of... I mean, when people talk about difficult games, they talk about, oh, this boss is so unforgiving.
Yeah.
I'm dead in one hit. But with this, it's... When you're stuck, and I remember... and I don't know which Broken Sword it was, but that goat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember the goat.
That's a different type of stuck.
Greatest of all time, definitely.
but yeah.
That was the stuck where... You remember those telephone lines for cheats and hints?
Yeah, you used to get sometimes you got a book in a magazine which you get cheats and codes, but it never had point-and-click adventures in there.
No, basically what we had to do was go to the newsagents or wherever sold the games magazines, look around surreptitiously to make sure the shopkeeper wasn't looking, take the video game magazine, go to the hints section and quickly read to see if we could find the hint that allowed us to proceed with the game. Yeah. Then quickly put it back on the shelf because these magazines were expensive and also we didn't steal.
Well, the thing about it, just my final point is these games are much more anecdotal than just about anything else. I mean, the only other games that come remotely as anecdotal is online multiplayer or multiplayer.
Yeah.
Because it's just that. It's not much of an experience, and I don't think games are really tailored on the same experience. What's fascinating about them is they're basically immortal.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. I mean, as far as getting close to mainstream, Telltale was its closest flirtation with mainstream success, but they burnt that bridge pretty hard. So, but yeah, it's a fascinating, always rewarding style of game.
Yeah. I totally agree.
I don't think I can ever really sum it up better than that.
Well, I mean, point-and-click adventures are something that I think will never die.
No, I don't think so.
I think there will always be a place for... and for developers now, I think point-and-click adventures are an easy way to make a game that's interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, you make it sound like it's... Let's just push out any old crap. What's easy?
No, that's why I said that it's an easy way to make a game that's interesting.
That's just Battle Royale games now, isn't it? What's easy? What's going to make us a load of money? Battle Royale.
But if you want to tell an interesting story, if you have an interesting concept, Death Stranding would have been interesting as a point-and-click adventure.
Yeah, it could have been.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
If Hideo Kojima wasn't insane. But yeah, that would have been the start. Yeah. But I think that's a good note to end on. That is why we love the point-and-click game. How about you? Anything that we didn't say that you thought was a reason why it's a great, enduring style of video game? Do comment below. But until next time, thanks for watching.